Welcome to DeFi by Design, where we talk all things blockchain and cryptocurrency while striving to educate, empower, and enrich.
It's your boy Andy, and welcome back to the DeFi Slate YouTube channel. Smash the like button on this video, that really helps us out, and sit back and enjoy the content. Thank you very much.
What's going on, guys? Welcome to episode 75 of the DeFi by Design podcast. Here today in the midst of the bear market to talk about what we are building in DeFi. Special guest here today, Kevin. We're going to be talking a lot about sports finance and how DeFi can and NFTs truly can make this entrance into real world assets, specifically sports. And there's a bunch of other applications too, where we can kind of get away just from the small Ethereum ecosystem and kind of work through the traditional world and kind of bring more types of people on chain to interact with DeFi and what we're building here. So as always, here with Rob as well. How you doing, Rob?
It's going well.
Good morning.
Doing well. Happy to have Kevin on here as well. Full transparency, I've been working with AthleteX for several months now, and I'm super stoked. I'm psyched about this project. It crosses the chasm of bringing like real world, like actually, like physical objects into the on-chain world by taking, an in-games, an athlete's performance in their real game and then digitizing that and then obviously tokenizing it for an on-chain protocol. So yeah, I'm super stoked to get into it, dig into sports finance and AthleteX, and here with Kevin. Kevin, how you doing, man?
Hey, how's it going, guys?
Going well. So, Kevin, start us off. As far as sports finance, the traditional, I guess, sports finance market kind of looks like sports betting, kind of like betting against the spread, betting money line, and then these kind of binary outcomes of, a team either wins or loses, or a prop bet, hits or doesn't hit. What is new in this on-chain world, new and different, than the traditional like Web 2 and traditional sports books?
Yeah, really what makes things new and different in the on-chain world is DeFi, right? And the ideas of DeFi especially. So ideas of being able to do things in a distributed way, being trustless and permissionless, allows for these new ideas, new innovations to come into play, and then allows for the technology to create things that couldn't really have existed before. So, one idea deep inside the AthleteX thinking is this idea of like synthetic assets, right? So these things aren't really tangible. You can't really hold them, but through DeFi, you're able to profit off of them and you're able to make them real in a way. I think the word you use is tokenize. Is that right?
Yeah. So tokenization of, data in a sense. The athletes are generating the statistical data when they play professional sports games, and then tokenizing that data allows for the digital object to be created. And then obviously there's tons of use cases that evolve from there. And that's a result of the synthetic tokens that AthleteX is working on and are used in kind of this on-chain sports finance world.
Yeah, and I want to hop in and add, AthleteX really builds on ideas that already existed in the ecosystem. So really thinking like synthetics and the financial engineering of the guys at the UMA protocol, they really laid the groundwork for new ways of thinking about financial engineering and new types of financial markets to be created, So yeah.
Right.
So for example, there's these guys called like Prediction Strike who like built up a athlete stock market. We've seen in the past other people have tried different ways of going about it, but the way they do it isn't as durable because it's not DeFi.
Yeah, it brings us to the concept of just like tokenizing everything in terms of like making it's really like it's an interesting world of speculation on everything. Sports betting has gotten huge with the development of apps like DraftKings and Bovada and such. And really, what you're able to do is basically speculate on these different types of games and athletes. But one thing that kind of stands out to me when it comes to gambling is that it's really all or nothing. Like if you hit your bet, you win or you lose, but there's no gradual scale. Whereas investing, you can lose 10% or make 10%, or you can, scale those out infinitely effectively. What are your thoughts on taking sports gambling and making it more of like a risk curve type of environment, and less so like an all or nothing environment?
Yeah, Andy, it sounds like you've been reading the white paper, man. So, so diving into that, how that works and what makes AthleteX a bit different is, we're not a binary you win, you lose model, right? We did explore with that. Like, what if there was like a dead weight or a counterweight to allocating all the capital on one side of the long short pair? But I'm getting too technical. Let me back up a bit, right? Just like you said, with how the system works is it's a linear scale payout. So it's not that one side only wins, one side only loses, but one side wins more because they're right, and one side wins less because they're on the other side of that bet.
Yeah, and I think it's interesting because you point to like, one actor or one market participant, they're not either right or wrong. In DraftKings, or FanDuel or, Bovada, you're either right or you're wrong based on the bet that you took. Whereas with these athlete performance tokens, you're on a scale of right. It's like you might be 10% right, or you might be 50% right. But it's not a binary right or wrong. It's just kind of like, are you as right as you could be, or are you as wrong as you could have been? And it opens up like the risk management tactics that are available in traditional investing, where you can kind of game your risk reward profile and tailor it to what your risk tolerance is, and take more calculated bets. And I think that's kind of like what is making the gambling ecosystem a bit more mature. It's taking what was previously like, a market that you could only be right or wrong, and then now you can take more calculated bets and either have a stop loss. You can kind of cut your losses early, or you can really bet on your winners. And I think that's kind of the power of investing, is it's a more specific approach. It's more granular kind of, and it allows for kind of more complex strategies to arise when there's more functionality that's built into the market itself.
Yeah, one way of thinking about it is like something that is already out there and really mature, Polymarket, right? So they facilitate, hundreds of thousands in volume for predictions, right? And it's also a linear scale payout, right? Like it's not 100% probability that Twitter will be delisted, but at the same time, it's not zero either. So what we did at AthleteX is that model. It's not 100% that Aaron Judge is going to have the best season ever, but it's not at zero either. It's probably more likely, right? But what makes us a bit more interesting is that you can trade your position of will Tom Brady play in 1 week of the NFL season with your guess of yes, with your guess of no to will NATO expand in 2022. Do you kind of see where I'm going, or is that a bit out there?
Right. Yeah. So you can kind of hedge your positions.
There we go.
Yeah. So what do you think about bringing this type of data in sports on chain? What are some of the challenges that you guys have seen What's your thoughts overall on Web3 and like the kind of concepts of ownership and your digital kind of ownership and passport interacting with fans, with sports, and with like these off-chain communities? What are your thoughts on the process of bringing them on chain?
Yeah. So my thoughts on like the process that it took to create this, right? And then from my experience, like what my thoughts are with what um, the community idea and the idea of like community ownership is, right? So I'll start with community ownership. From my experience, right? It looks like really like those most likely to vote are like those most activated, and the rest are a bit more like accepting of what happens. Um, and it's kind of like everything else, like if we stay true to the term like currency, like from my experience, it seems to me like a cryptocurrency is almost akin to like a currency for like an idea or like an economy, right? Kind of like what the idea we were playing with here is like creating like a digital economy of these synthetic derivatives. Um, and that kind of ties into your other thing was like what is the challenge of bringing it on chain and what was it like, building the idea of it. Um, one from my experience, right? To me, it seemed like this like thing that of course it's going to happen, and because I'm like staring at it every day. But in terms of all the people out there in the world, nobody's really heard of this yet or is really paying attention just yet. And yet when they understand that there can be an economy for other types of prediction markets and new types of things that people can gather information from, I think that it'll really change the world, right? I was at a bar doing what I do, hanging out, drinking everything, and I've been talking about it with people in my local town, and I showed, hey, like I told this guy, hey, this idea I've been working on is now a real thing, and he said something that I was like, what? He said like, do you understand what you've built? You've changed the way people think about sports and investing forever. And I'm like, it doesn't seem like that in the moment, but it seems like that's the direction we're headed, like yeah.
Right. Yeah, I mean, a lot of sports fans are. I I think there's a broader concept of digital ownership here that we can get into with NFTs. Have you thought about kind of where how NFTs could replace ticketing or could replace people's their kind of like digital identity and kind of how that ties into some opportunities that they could have with AthleteX or just kind of with their activities. What are your thoughts on like NFTs and digital ownership for people who are not yet introduced to Web3?
Yeah, yeah. We worked with a guy who ended up working for an NFT project, and he had a bunch of ideas of like just like the things you said. NFTs represent community ownership, and they represent like incentive and like being part of a club and community. And it sounds really interesting. I just don't know enough about it yet. I haven't spent a lot of my personal eyeballs, just have heard through the grapevine.
Solid. Yeah. So getting a bit more into like what AthleteX is, and then kind of expanding from there about the different use cases and applications that evolve out of it. From my understanding, we have the athlete performance tokens that rise or fall based on the in-game performance of that athlete. Like you mentioned, athlete performance tokens are minted from UMA's long-short pair contract. So each athlete token is either a long or a short based on the directional exposure of their performance. So I'm interested in kind of like the applications that evolve out of that athlete token standard. Now that AthleteX has built the kind of financial framework for a DeFi protocol that creates these synthetic tokens, what are some of the applications that are possible through the AthleteX protocol utilizing these athlete tokens? Kind of like what are the possibilities that are unlocked now that APTs are a real token standard?
Yeah, they're real, it's crazy. But yeah, so building off of the ideas that you just brought up, that's a great segue to what we want to push in our governance, right? So what we've created so far using blood, sweat, and creative ideas is a proof of framework, right? Really, it's like, oh, okay, here's a new way of thinking about things. Let's build on that new way of thinking about things with AXIP 0001. So the idea there is to build in a DeFi way a token that represents someone's like aggregate standard, the cumulative value of their performance. In the future, it would mean and creating like a more like a futures market, right? Like imagine multiple seasons down the road of APTs. You can hedge against the risk of like your money line on Cristiano Ronaldo, because you hold his futures like 2 years down the line or something like that. It just opens new ways of thinking.
Yeah, I don't mean to interrupt, but I was listening to a Twitter video the other day, and it was actually like one of these picks guys, right? And he was just saying like, hey, like here's a parlay, for you, like check out these picks if you like, he was kind of like calling his bet, and he mentioned how like you could take this certain team to win, and if that team wins, it's very likely that a player on that team is going to get a hit. And I forget the player that he was pointing to. It might have been like Starling Marte. And if his team wins, it's very likely that Starling Marte is going to get a hit, or even a little bit less likely, but still potential that he gets a home run and then they win. So pairing the two possibilities into a parlay, that's almost like taking leverage, right? I think this team is going to win, and if they win, it's likely that this player is going to get a hit. So the opportunity for leverage in like the AthleteX economy, someone can go take their bet on, a traditional sports book like SportX. And then, given that that team is going to win, you're almost betting that the players on that team are going to do well. So you could go and lever up by buying the athlete performance tokens that are on that team. And the same is true, to hedge against your bet. If you think this team is going to win, but you're not really sure, maybe like it's, the middle of the game, they're not really doing well, you can buy an athlete token for a player that's on the other opposing team and, hedge against your bet and kind of bring your risk profile down a bit. And that kind of speaks to like the investment nature, bringing, the sports finance market from this gambling risk curve where it's just, very binary, to more of a more mature market where there's an entire risk curve, and you can kind of have a more complex strategy to take advantages of kind of the rise and falls of those different athletes' performance.
Yeah, it's interesting, trading on leverage.
Yeah. So, the athlete tokens kind of open up this new kind of market of taking leverage, hedging against your bets, and then obviously like, kind of playing the rise or fall of how that team is doing in real time. And then you mentioned forward and futures markets as well. As far as like, taking these athlete performance tokens and then evolving them into like, the greater, world of sports finance, what do you expect kind of engages people on, a sports mindset that maybe they're not so deep into DeFi now, but, they're really interested in sports? What do you see as the pull or the attraction of athlete tokens for that demographic?
Yeah. I really have to go based off of my experience and like the interviews that I've done with like different people, right? So and it helps to break it down by different types of people, because different types of people are incentivized or interested with different things. It helps to start with you, Robbie, Andy. You guys are DeFi users, maybe you're a bit of a degenerate. You like aping into different things. You see what happened with optimism, and you're like, this market seems interesting. I like sports. This seems fun. And so you go in there and you just speculate to speculate. But prediction markets are information markets, and information means two things. One, they tell you about different things, but two, they're information about something, right? Like they about something. And so another type of person who would be interested in using this is someone who, my guess here is like someone who makes money or like cares a lot about how an athlete does. Maybe they take care of them like with like injuries or whatever. And they'll be able to hedge against the outcome of certain seasons by placing their money in a long or short position for that athlete. And then there's other people that are like finance professors who they love sports. They love their like local college basketball team, and they teach finance, things like using a pricing formula, creating a pricing formula, things more on the financial engineering side would be one other reason that they'd want to use this product to help create this new type of marketplace. Does that make sense?
Yes, it does indeed. And I mean, I'm wondering what you think are the best use cases sports wise, for this. Like, is there a specific sport or kind of event that you see the technology working best for, and thus giving the users the best experience? What are your thoughts on the different sports and different applications of these performance, and can they be applied anywhere, these performance tokens?
Yeah, that's a great question. I don't know the answer, I can't imagine how people will use it, but as different people with different interests and different wants look at it, I'm sure they'll like find a use case that fits their life.
Right. Yeah.
Like
Gotcha.
one quick example was like I think last year we sponsored like a MMA tournament, and like people there, maybe they could use like the new type of APT to they're like young MMA fighters, and they're getting their career started, and they're like broke as shit, and if there was a way for them to like issue their own tokens and sort of like bet on themselves and have people speculate on whether they do good or bad for their career, would be a way for them to like finance themselves into success potentially,
Yeah. Interesting.
And that's the athlete themselves. Yeah, go ahead, Andy.
Yeah, no, I think I was on the same page. Yeah, so those are for the athletes. Where does the kind of the speculator or the user come in there?
Where does the speculator or user come in? They speculate, kind of like what speculators do. Do they think that are they going to win their like next MMA tournament or yada yada yada? But I have to say, like, that was like what brought that up was like when talking to those people, they're like, I need this to solve this problem in my life, but I don't know if or how that'll look. It really just depends on people creating it and making it happen.
Yeah. The use cases are they're abstract, because I mean no one really knew like what are ERC20 tokens going to get used for, and then it ends up morphing into like these different kind of communities that are like these different tokenized communities, and then I think the the same is kind of true for NFTs, right? Like I was around when NFTs were coming out, and they were like, this new token standard, ERC 721. Like, okay, cool, but like, what does that really mean? And then it took like a year for anyone to actually put a use case around it, and they called it crypto kitties. And like, it's just like a digital Pokemon, like it's like what is like a crypto kitty? It was just like this piece of, like art that you could see on the blockchain. So I think it's really open-ended as far as like how the applications will evolve based on a new token standard. But if we point to like some of the applications that already see demand in the Web 2 space, I kind of anticipate like that market coinciding with, the DeFi and the Web 3 space on a new token standard. Like, we can picture fantasy sports as like, as a use case on an already existing Web 2 platform that has a significant base of users. What does that look like in Web 3, and how could fantasy sports incorporate athlete performance tokens?
Yeah, that's a great question. Yeah, I don't know. I wonder how they would use it. Let's see. Andy, do you have any ideas?
I was thinking that, I mean, if you could play fantasy sports for in your league for whatever you guys agree on, like $100 each or something. If the winner of the league could be calculated using athlete tokens for each of the athletes on each team.
Okay.
Yeah. And that's one idea. And, Kev, jump in if you have others. I guess what I was kind of getting at was kind of like an index token, where someone could kind of build an index of these athlete performance tokens and track them as their team.
Yeah. So like an index token. Okay. Yeah. Actually, that raises an interesting idea, right? So later this year when we launch NFL APTs, what if you could like basket together all the quarterbacks and bundle like those APTs into like those like positions into a I don't know, like will you just hold that in your wallet and just like ride it out to the end of the season and settle on all those positions? Or I wonder if somebody would like want to create a token that locks up all those positions and call that like an index, quarterback index or something like that. Quarterback long index.
Exactly. And I guess the inspiration for that is we were just chatting with the notional finance team, and a couple months ago they put together an index of stable coins. And it was like this interest-bearing, token where you have like a bunch of different tokens that are grouped together, and there was USDC and DAI and USDT all in there, deployed in some LPs, and then each of these, tokens that were basketed together were generating interest, and then you could track them as one token. And just like you're saying, I guess users could combine these athlete performance tokens in several unique ways, like a quarterback index. I guess I was more pointing to like if I could build out, like I've played fantasy sports, so like I draft my team, right? I'll draft like a running back and then a receiver and then a quarterback. If I could bundle up like each of those athlete performance tokens, I could have like my fantasy team.
Okay, yeah, I see where you're coming from. I think like building on that, like core to AX's strategy is allowing others to build on those ideas. Uniswap, they have this idea of like permissionless innovation, and they're saying that's core and key to DeFi. And like it's not a bad thing that people build on our ideas because it just makes the pie bigger for everybody. And like there's Bitcoin and then there's Bitcoin Cash, right? There's nothing wrong with Bitcoin Cash existing. It doesn't take away from Bitcoin, but adds to the sum of its whole, really, right? And like we created or offered a new way of thinking about sports and athletes and fantasy, and by letting others build on top of it, it becomes more and more applicable to more and more people and more tangible to their lives.
Yep. And you mentioned how like the pie is greater, right? When like more use cases and applications are developed on top of the AthleteX protocol.
Yeah, exactly.
Yeah, I guess could you dive a bit deeper? Like, how does the AthleteX protocol benefit from maybe a fantasy sports application that incorporates, athlete performance tokens? How does that benefit like AX token holders?
Yeah. Core to our strategy right now, at least, is by making AX token the token of collateral and liquidity for the system, right? And it remains to be seen, but one of the ideas that we were holding to our core is that, by building on top of the APTs, and by using AX as collateral, we can expand this market based off of athlete performance in sports, right? The idea is that with enough volume going back and forth between an APT and AX, that makes it so that AX fluctuates more and more with how athletes are doing, and less eventually with like what other markets are doing. And we'll have to see, but I think that's part of our thesis, and that's how AX token holders benefit from building on AX protocol.
And what kind of chain, what is your thought on where you guys are deploying or future deployments? Why did you choose Polygon as of now? Kind of what are your thoughts?
Yeah, I remember this. Started off with Ethereum, went to Binance, and then went to Polygon. It's all about the money, cheapest fees, easy answer. And so building on that, it's the cheapest fees, and it's EVM compatible. So like the technology already makes sense and is easy to deploy to that. Versus something like Solana, which is written in Rust. It was just a new paradigm, and you'd have to get over the learning curve to deploy on Solana.
Awesome. So yeah, as far as like Polygon deployment, like now with these other like side chains coming out, it seems like there's always like a newer, cheaper, faster chain available. What does scalability look like for AX in terms of generating the most demand for athlete tokens and the most volume that's utilizing athlete tokens, whether it's trading athlete tokens directly or if it's indexing them and trading them as a quarterback index or a running back index? What does scalability look like? Starting with Polygon and going from there.
Okay, for sure. Let's see. So I don't know if you guys have heard, but there's these guys, SportX, who are launching their own chain that are focused on sports and crypto, right up our alleyway. And so by staying focused and staying core to that system, we can really hit our target market right where they are expected to be. SportX is about crypto and sports, and on their SX Bet product, they have a lot of different markets going on at once and a lot of different money lines going on at once. And now that they launched a chain, by staying right there, right in the middle of their ecosystem, we can grow stronger together by learning from their ideas, they learning from our ideas, building on top of each other, and yeah, really just being one happy little niche economy.
What's coming next for AthleteX, and how can our community get involved?
Yeah, for sure. So ways for you to get involved is definitely on creating new ideas for new APTs to build on AX. And also just, using it, getting acquainted with it, telling your friends. Right now, an APT is about $100 worth of AX to use and to mess around with. And really, we just want to see what you do with it and new ways that you think bring value to the system.
Sweet. Kevin, I guess I got two questions. One we typically ask each podcast, and I'll start with what is I don't know, could you give us any alpha, what's coming on the horizon? You mentioned the SportX deployment. And that's a relatively nascent chain. So there's not a lot of activity or TVL on that chain. Are they doing anything to incentivize applications and developers and builders over on that chain to start generating TVL and kind of bootstrap their activity?
Yeah, they launched their own Trader Joe like swap called Shark Swap. They're still, letting it mature, taking their time, all good things. But that, once that hits maturity, will be another hub of activity in the DeFi space. And then really the best alpha that I can provide is AX alpha, right? And different things that you can think about is, here's one, like the collateral per pair requirement, right? So we have the power to set, the range of APTs, and it affects the scale of the market, And so right now, what we hope to see is once we see a lot of users using the platform, you guys tell me if I'm using this term correctly, but like an APT is almost like leveraged on AX, or it's backed by a lot of AX. So minute moves in AX end up being major moves in APT price. And so I'm just curious to see as we mature, like what that ends up being, what that looks like.
Yeah. It'll kind of pave the way for like new opportunities, new applications, and use cases. Cool. And then the second question is, if you could describe AthleteX to one individual, like dead or alive, like if you could, get stuck in an elevator with anyone and have the opportunity to, speak on AthleteX, who would you choose and why?
Yeah. If I could talk to anybody about I would choose like young LeBron and be like, hey, there's this thing that if you can figure out a way to profit off of let's see. No, actually, I'd probably tell like the head of like Goldman Sachs or something, It's like, okay, take everything you know about all that you know. Now take your favorite sport, take your love for golf or tennis or whatever, and they'll get married. and this is how it works. Because a lot of the words that guys in investment banking, guys that like the CEO of Goldman Sachs use, we use at AthleteX, and a lot of that language overlaps. Except now it's about how Aaron Judge played this season, or how Tiger Phelps, LeBron James, Michael Woods, how they play, and how that affects their performance, and how they as bankers can use that technology.
Cool, man. That's awesome, and congrats on the success so far. Excited to see where this goes, and thanks for coming on, Kev.
Word, yeah. Thank you guys. It's been great, and I hope to see you again soon.
Yeah, it was a pleasure. Thanks. Sounds good. We'll see you soon.
Go AX.
Cheers, Kev.
Get it.